Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the tank review on the M41 Walker Bulldog. And this is the Japanese version. As I promised, this is the second tank review on a Japanese tank. So I think it will not come as a surprise that this M41 Walker Bulldog is very similar to its American counterpart. So you can practically respect it as a tank review on the American M41 Walker Bulldog as well. The M41 Walker Bulldog was the very first tank in War Thunder to get a PDS, way before the introduction of the British tanks, and I began to really like a PDS back in the days. And you have to remember, I thought the M41 Walker Bulldog is a fantastic tank up until I began to play it again, because I didn't play it for a very long time. And the spading process was not as bad as on certain other tanks. However, I have to directly compare it to some of its American cousins, so to speak, and it doesn't come off too good in the direct comparison of the results. The stats, on the other hand, are really, really great, and in a lot of cases, the very best. So obviously I will give you a full rundown on the statistics, we'll compare it to its main opponents on the battlefield, we'll give you tips and tricks how to make it work, but also how to effectively take it out on the battlefield if you play against it. Before I go into the usual rundown of armor, interior, and the comparison of mobility, firepower, etc., I want to give you a very good look at the camouflage for two reasons. First of all, the Japanese do fight the Americans in tank realistic, which is kind of strange as a good portion of their tanks are directly taken from the American tech tree, so to speak. And so I wanted to show you the camouflage. This is the standard. This is the beige gray green, which looks really great in my opinion. The green bicolor camouflage, and then this multicolor camouflage, which is strange as those very blue parts provide you with very good contrast, and I'm not really sure if this is more artistic or more camouflage really. And then we also have this rather nice winter camouflage, although not a lot of white is going on. And so you might just get on with some decals, so to speak, with some white ones. And yeah. And then let's go to the armor. Around the armor, well, there's not too much to say. It's a light tank after all. However, it's not paper thin and will save you more than once from heavy machine gun fire. The lower plate goes up to around 50 millimeters of effective armor, the upper plate 45 millimeters depending exactly on the angle. This part here, yeah, it's a difficult target. However, yeah, it's not really a game saver. Then we have this turret ring with 25 millimeters, the turret front again 25 millimeters, the gun mantle has 31, and at the edges we have some nice angles, but never exceeding 55 millimeters. We have a little bit of overlap, but it will not really save you. This rooftop again is very thin, and the prominent commander's cupola is also 31.7 millimeters thick, and it's a rather big target, I have to say, and it's not rounded that well. Then we have the side. At the front of the side plate it is 25.4 millimeters and the back is 19 millimeters. So where the engine sits, it's thinner to save weight, I guess. The side of the turret is also 25 millimeters and it's a big target. The rear 19, 12.7, the rooftop 19, and 25.4 at the back of the turret. And the turret roof is as well 19 millimeters. So effectively, the roof is not paper thin again, and that gives you the first sign of what is not right with the Walker Bulldog. It is it's supposed to be a light tank. However, it is really, really tall. It's a really big tank, and also thanks to Commander Scopola and the prominent M2 Browning machine gun, you really can't stealth work with in comparison to other vehicles such as the T-92 or some of the Russian vehicles, which are really low profile. This tank, in fact, is as big or nearly as big as a German Panther. So that is the first big problem that I have with this tank. But let's go on with the interior. And we can see that we have 4 crew members. We have the driver on the right hand side. We have the gunner and the loader or the commander on the left hand side. And the loader is more in the middle of the tank than to the really the right, but it's middle right hand side. The next thing is we have a transmission and the engine together with the fuel tanks in the back, and that is a very solid target. And they also love to blow up really, really nicely. The next thing is ammo racks. And I have to say something about this ammo racks. We have overall 65 shells, and we have practically 4 ammo racks. Not 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Where is the 4th? Well, the frontal ammo rack is actually divided into 2 pieces, which you actually can't see, and that is something very awkward. Normally 65 shells is a huge amount that you normally don't need, so you might enhance your survivability by taking out ammunition, right? Yeah, it works with this one, and then suddenly you don't know which one to take out. You take out the amount of shells that contains this amount of shells and this amount, but this is still there. And then you think, if I take this out, I'm just left with this one, but that's not a lot of ammunition. That would be 13, 14 shells. So the truth is that there is some kind of bug, I guess, that says when you take 20 shells, you have this ammo rack full, but it's more than 20 shells, right? It's more like 28, 33 shells. So 33 shells you could theoretically take into battle. But if you take more than 20, this ammo rack gets filled again, but you don't have the amount of shells. So practically you can take all the ammunition effectively without those 11 shells. But don't think for 1 second that this tank actually can absorb any kind of damage, because while this tank is huge, the majority of it is filled either with ammo racks, or the turret is your doom, so to speak, as when it gets hit you lose either 2 people and then lose your main advantage of the rate of fire, or you lose all 3, and they are tightly packed, and you can see like half of the turret's space is empty. So if you shoot it right here, you can take out them all, so to speak, if you shoot right here. And also I have to say about the internal modules, like the horizontal aiming drive and the gun breech and the gun and everything practically takes massive amounts of damage from normal shells. It even doesn't have to be a APHE shell. It can be a solid shot, an APCR shell, and you will lose your tank mostly with 1 shell. And AAA will just simply feast on you. And about the mobility, we can see we have here a nice 500 horsepower engine, which is kind of average in this comparison. And with 23 tons, it is on the lighter end of the spectrum, but not as light as its predecessor and its successor in the American tech tree. The horsepower to ton ratio is excellent, 21.7 tons, and a top speed of 72 kilometers an hour certainly on paper give it the mobility to bomb it around on the battlefield. One bad factor is the not so great reverse speed of just 10 kilometers an hour. Certainly the Super Hellcat and also the M41 Chaffee are better in this respect, but it is still better than the majority of the other tanks. So again, we have a very high top speed. Does it reach it? No, not at all. It doesn't come even close. Again, like the Leopard and other tanks in this respect. However, On flat terrain or downhill, you can go up to really high speeds. In the majority of cases, you're around about 35 or 40 kilometers an hour. Again, there is a trick. If you turn around the turret, if you have to cover a long distance, just waste some shells firing backwards, and you will increase your speed by 3 to 4 kilometers per shot. If you can hold it, it's a different question. It depends on the terrain and the situation overall. But as we can see in a moment, the tank has the shell capacity and also the turret rotation speed to support it. I think the biggest competitor in this respect is the Super Hellcat. And the Super Hellcat has stats that are very close to this tank in this respect. And we will come back to the Super Hellcat in a moment. It has a weaker engine, but less weight. Horsepower to ton ratio is very close, just 0.8 less. And the top speed is the same, but the reverse speed is so much better, but it has no neutral steering. So keep that in mind. Then let's talk about the firepower, and we have a 76.1mm M32 cannon with 65 shells overall and a relatively high rate of fire of 5.9 seconds for an ace crew. That's the reload speed. And the turret rotation is very, very good with 32.5 degrees per second. Just its American counterpart is a bit faster by 0.6 degrees per second. And the gun depression is also very good, very comfortable, minus 10 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation makes it very best in this comparison, along with its American counterpart, the Super Hellcat, and also to the T92, which is its successor in the American tech tree. So you can immediately see we have the smallest caliber, but for all intents and purposes, at this battle rating, the highest rate of fire, especially in comparison to the T-34-100, which I put in this comparison, the Panther II, or the Super Hellcat. But they shine in other respects, which I will cover in a moment. So again, you might ask, why did I put so many medium tanks in this comparison? Well, it's very simple. The Germans, the Russians to a certain degree, and also the British have simply no real light tanks that you can compare to it. And as well, in the reality of War Thunder, so to speak, you have to compete with these tanks when you are teamed up with them or when you face them. And so you have to know that you have to deal with them in a head-on engagement very regularly. What about the ammunition? Well, the first shell type that I want to present you is the M352 shell, which is a high explosive shell. 732 meters per second is not the highest shell velocity, but acceptable, I guess. The surprising fact are the 12 millimeters of penetration against all angles at any distance, and that is quite a high penetration value for a regular HE shell of that caliber. And it's better than, for example, the high explosive on a 20-pounder and just 1 millimeter less than on the German 88. So it actually performs in a higher caliber role, so to speak. But it is not really something special, so better forget about it. The next shell type is the M339 shot, which is a simple armor-piercing shell and also your first stock shell, so to speak. It features 975 meters per second muzzle velocity, which is not bad, and 180 meters per second of penetration. And while this is actually better than its direct competitor, the Super Hellcat, in this respect, it is not good enough, so to speak, because the damaging effect is not the greatest. So what about the first tier 2 researchable shell? It is the M319 shot, which is an APCR shot. It is, as I said, a tier 2 upgrade, and it has a relatively high muzzle velocity of 1262 meters per second. That is great to aim, but the penetration just increases by 28 millimeters. And also it performs really poorly against any kind of sloped armor, and the damaging output is also not the greatest. So this shell does not really shine that much, unlike the next one. The M331A 2-shot is a tier 3 upgrade, and it is an APDS shell. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this was the first APDS shell ever in War Thunder. It has a muzzle velocity of 1231 meters per second, which is a bit slower than the APCR shell, but still very nice to use and easy to aim. It features a penetration value of up to 232 millimeters, and it works rather well against sloped armor. And for this tank, it is simply the best shell to use. However, it is one, if not the smallest APDS shell within War Thunder, and when I first used it, I did not really appreciate how good it can be, because I saw most of the time the drawbacks. And the problem with this APDS shell is that you have no real alternative. The APCR shell is bad, the solid shot doesn't give you the penetration, the HE shell is rather worthless in most engagements, and you need to penetrate your target. The problem that I have with this shell is that it doesn't have an insane amount of penetration like the British 20-pounder, where I can reliably pierce the hull of any kind of tank that I face, except for example the King Tiger, but you know, that's a different topic. But it is also that this shell gets, you know, absorbed so often by tracks, and you just can't put down your enemy in comparison. Also, the damaging effect is sometimes very poor, and you miss the enemy crew member by like a few centimeters and the shell doesn't do any damage. But you aim for the gunner, you can't take it out, and the return shot just simply kills you. And this is the part where this tank is highly frustrating, and where the Super Hellcat is just simply the match manager. I can go behind enemy lines and I can silence enemy tanks with one shell. More than once I have to decide with the Walker Bulldog's APDS where I have to shoot the enemy. And while it is possible, thanks to the high rate of fire, to act like a tank surgeon, I just simply can't take down enemy tanks that fast. So I can't get behind enemy lines and one-shot enemies. Sometimes the ammunition doesn't explode. Sometimes I miss everything and the shell goes through the tank and does absolutely no damage. Sometimes I just hurt a crew member because I have practically a near miss and the shrapnels are not enough to kill my opponent's gunner, for example. Or when his gunner is taken out, he drives into cover, and before I can reach him, he points his armor towards me, and I miss the shot because he wiggles his turret, he shoots back, and I'm dead. I don't simply have this problem with the Super Hellcat, and that is the big drawback of this tank. While overall, as you could see, the stats in terms of firepower and muzzle velocity and rate of fire, shell capacity, overall the mobility are all amongst the best stats, it just doesn't help you if you can't kill your enemy. And this is the big contrast, for example, in comparison to the Super Hellcat or its predecessor, the M24 Chaffee. The M24 Chaffee at its battle rating can take out tanks even from the front with one shot, because it features a medium tank gun. This is a pure light tank gun, and the pure fact that I don't have APHE or even Heat FS like on the T92, its successor, just is really crippling for this tank. So I think that's it with this. Let's hop into some gameplay. And this is Fields of Normandy, and this T44 just ignored my presence, so I had all the time in the world to repair and aim at the back of his turret. I hoped for some ammunition to be there. And yeah, the gun breach, as I mentioned, takes damage very easily, so I had to reload with just 2 crew members, which takes ages for a light tank. And this is an intelligent tanker, so he took out all the ammunition from his turret. And I couldn't kill the third crew member with this one shot. Tries to wheel his turret, but I'm having none of it. So, another kill. What to do now? What to do now? Well, this is again a very aggressive position, but what can you do on fields of Normandy? This is the hilly terrain where you should go as a light tank and as the M41 Walker Bulldog in particular. I see a T-34 and I kill him with one shot. The crew members were aligned in a perfect position for me to shoot at because he had turned his turret to the side. And when you turn the turret, your crew members that are located in the turret, so to speak, turn with the turret, obviously. And I look for other victims. And I think to myself, well, this is the time now I have to make the aggressive push. Can I take down this tank with one shot? I can. 4th kill. And then I realized too late that I actually ran into the entirety of the enemy flank. Yeah, I should have positioned myself a little bit more carefully with a bit more time. And again, I couldn't take this guy out. And he was also very intelligent and put out the ammunition in the front of the tank. So this is the next battle here on Berlin. And I put myself again in a very aggressive position. However, if you look how the spawns are located and how the cap circles are located, you can see why I can get there relatively quickly. And I have here a gap between the houses that gives me very good cover, and the enemy don't expect me there. And I took out the IS-2 with one shot. Great result there. Can I repeat it with the IS-1? Sadly no, just engine damage, but I put him on fire. And now the question is, what happens next? He survives. That's a bad thing. He survived that shot. Granted, it was just an engine shot, but still, what can I do? And I decided to go a little bit more forward. And he put a shell into my tracks. And I didn't take the chance to shoot at him back because I did not know for sure if he was the one that shot me. That was a very lucky shot because he easily could overmatch my armor. Let's call it overmatch to make it simpler. I see another tank and I don't go through the back of his turret again. So I have to say about this APDS, it just reminds me so much like the Leopard's APDS, you know, the German tier 8 battle rating 8.0 tier 5 medium main battle tank. And now I'm in the position that my position is compromised. The enemies are looking there, so yeah. And I see that the IS-1 was repositioning himself. He gave up looking at my position. I immediately took advantage of that and killed him with a nice shot in the crew compartment. So good result right there. And I decide that I will go for it. Now I dipped into the enemy cap circle and I was not staying in there. And that is a main tactic in your light tanks. You should just drive in so it begins to decap. And that has two reasons. You put pressure on the enemy team. You panic some of the more unexperienced players, let's put it that way. And when somebody is recapping, you get the message. So you know that in this area there is at least one tank. And knowledge is one of the main weapons of your tanks. And at first I didn't see this guy, but I had to look twice. And then I hear a wyvern. Yeah. So this charioteer was easily killable with one shot. Again, not a very nice tank to drive in my opinion, despite having the fantastic 20-pounder. But it is always how the gun is implemented in the tank, so to speak. I hear the wyvern again. And I hear bombs. And yeah. So, welcome back to Karelia, I guess. After this quick ending, so to speak. And again, I make here a relatively aggressive push. Now, it is very important that at the beginning of the battle you get out of the cap zone, especially here on Karelia, so that the enemy doesn't, you know, spawn camp you back. Karelia, especially this western location, or the eastern location rather, is famous for its mountain goats and tank destroyers that just love to camp there and wait for relatively slow tanks. I decide to just simply lay an ambush for enemy tanks right there. And let's see how it goes. Now you can see the mobility of this tank is not bad, but it is not really extremely good either. On the other hand, I have to say this tank was not too terrible when being stuck. And here I make a very aggressive push and just take my chances. Taking your chances in a light tank is sometimes something that you just simply have to do to relocate, which is also a main point of your arsenal of tactics, so to speak. Playing light tanks is never easy, but if you just again compare like the Super Hellcat to the M41 Walker Bulldog, the brutal difference in firepower, or not really firepower, rather than damaging effect of the best shell that you can use, is just so different. But in this situation right here, the shell was good enough. Killing the T-34-85 with one shell is always really nice. And then I see this white camouflage on this tank, and I'm not quite sure. I just tried a little bit too much, but I can't get to him. So I have to again try to retreat. And then I see a AAA. AAAs are your best victims and also your worst enemies. I shoot him, but no damage whatsoever. And, you know, this shell was just outright bad. But I had a quick enough reload to put an end to this AAA before he could hit me. If he would have hit me, even with the stock belt, there is always this one armor-piercing shell that just ends you. Or just cripples you to a degree where you have difficult times to continue the fight. And then I go into a very risky situation. And again, the track eats a lot of the kinetic energy, and the rest of the shell goes through the tank without damaging too much. The ammo rack just goes yellow, but nothing more. And then I found myself in this rather awkward position where I trapped myself, so to speak. So I cut this out because it took me a while to get out of this, and afterwards I repaired myself. Now I go into A, just decapping it and moving on. I could cap it, but this would indicate for an enemy that I am at a certain location. And while he does not know that I'm a light tank, at the end of the day, I would be a rather easy picking in a head-on engagement, which I want to try to avoid, especially when being down to just 2 crew members. Now, I'm not saying that I'm useless with just 2 crew members, but, you know, you just lack the ability of your rapid fire. And yeah, at this point, I also just go through B and decapture it, and I move on to the enemy's spawn point. Now, at this point in time, the enemy team actually was about to lose anyway, because they were down so many players that it was just now a question of picking up the kills. A Tiger 2 here ends the Stridsvagn 81. I hope I pronounced it right. And I just go to the backside of the match, or the spawn point rather, backside of the match, and I one-shot this ZSU-37 with a lucky shot into the ammo rack and also taking out multiple crew members. So sometimes the APDS works really nice. And then we have here the bad part, that I'm just down to my light machine gun. And as you can see, I just simply don't have the rate of fire anymore to put in the following shot that would have secured me that kill. So the Tiger II ends this poor M19, and I'm here with a kill assist. Then there is this T-34, he's active. I put one shell into him. By active, I mean the spawn protection is off, so I can shoot him and actually damage him. If there is spawn protection on him, the shell would just go right through. I would be defenseless and he would end me. Also, I would give my position away. Then there is this M56. And I'm down with my machine gun. The gunner has to reload. And the APDS went right through the gunner. So I had to end him with my machine gun. 4th kill. I'm quite sure that this was a bug and not the unreliability of the APDS. Then I hear an IS-2 firing, and he just set the Panther II on fire. And now, of course, he gets swarmed. And again, the spawn protection is still on. And this Tiger II actually makes a big mistake by ramming into him. I realized that the spawn protection is off, and one APDS through the crew compartment of the IS-2 is enough to put him down. At this point, there is no point, so to speak, to stay here and to ramble for the kills. So the next scene is quite funny. I actually bounced something and I just wanted to get into cover. And I realize it's a Stridsvagn 81. I put down his gunner and commander, lightly damaging the gun breach. I get out of the way as I thought he would ram me, and he goes directly into a Tiger II, not able to use his gun or his rockets, his ATGMs. So, and that was my 6th kill. And after that, we just had to wait. Somebody was hiding somewhere, so I cut out the last 5 minutes and just enjoy the nice view. I have no idea where the last tank was, but it doesn't matter. I got the survivor, 6 kills, 2 assists, and let's just have a quick look at the post-battle results. Come on, load faster. As we can see, I got 35,000 silver lines and just under 3,000 modification research points, and I was 3rd in team with 1,725 score points. So that's it for the M41 Walker Bulldog. A nice tank with a lot of nice stats. Just the killing blow is something that this tank lacks, in my opinion. The unreliability of the APDS, the tallness of the tank, the lack of survivability, it all makes this tank very unforgiving to play. But if you really want a sneaky tank that just has the speed to go into position when you have the will to take on this playstyle, the Walker Bulldog certainly provides you with the speed and the rapid firepower that you need. On the other hand, at this battle rating for a rapid flanking tank, the Super Hellcat is just simply the better option. I hope you found this tank review useful, and I hope you liked it. If so, give it a like and let me know in the comment section what your experiences with the Walker Bulldogs are. From other comments on other tank reviews, I found out that a lot of you really like the Walker Bulldog, or some of you want to know how to play this tank. And so again, I hope you liked this tank review and it provided you with useful information, especially in the comparison compartment. And that's it for me today. So if you want to see more, please subscribe, and we'll see each other on the battlefield of War Thunder.